It turns out basketball is a simple game. You make shots and you'll probably win. The Kings put up 140 points on the San Antonio Spurs tonight. All the starters ate. The Kings sharpshooters hold the keys to victory. And Keon Ellis both needs to play every night and might be further proof of a disconnect between head coach Mike Brown and general manager Monty McNair. I'll explain it all right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News, and still sick. Still dealing with the illness that I got going on right now. But it made me feel a little bit better watching the Sacramento Kings knock down shot after shot after shot after shot. Finally, the day after I record a podcast about the Kings offense letting them down in that loss to the Memphis Grizzlies last night, the day after recording a podcast talking about the inconsistencies of the Sacramento Kings' primary strength, which is on the offensive side of the floor, the Kings remind everybody just how dangerous and dynamic they can be offensively when the ball is going in the basket. Basketball is a child's game, right? Take ball, put in hoop, you win. You score points. The more points you have, the better your chances are of winning. You have more points than your opponent, you win the game, right? That's obviously a drastic oversimplification of how difficult and dynamic the NBA game is. And it's, as much as I wish it was that simple on a nightly basis, it's a lot harder for the Sacramento Kings to put the ball in the basket, or any NBA team to put the ball in the basket, than what I made it out to be. But truthfully, the reason why the Sacramento Kings have not looked close to themselves, the reason why the Sacramento Kings are 2 games under 500 at this point in the season and are struggling out of the gate, is because consistently they just have not been able to shoot the ball and score at the level that we thought they were capable of. Because this offense has the capability to maybe not fully negate, but drastically limit or maybe even hide the damage done by their poor defense, right? Yes, their defense is still an issue, especially the three-point defense, still an issue. Although these last couple of games of three-point defense, I felt has looked better. But when the Kings are shooting the ball well, when the Kings are actually scoring and moving the basketball at the level that they're capable of, and for the most part this season, they have moved the ball well and generated good shots. The problem is they're not making those good shots, so it does not matter. When the Kings are scoring at the rate that they're capable of, I'm not saying they're going to put up 140 points a night, or they should be putting up 140 points a night, but it makes their defense a lot more manageable. And on top of that, while it is not a good thing that your defense is impacted by your offense, because on nights where you're not shooting the basketball well, you need your defense to help carry you through. It's a reality that guys typically play harder on the defensive end when they're rolling on the offensive end, because them hitting shots is giving them energy. On top of that, the mental fatigue that wears down a basketball team, an opponent, when you're making shots, not just to the rate that the Kings made tonight, but when you're making shots, period, that steals some of the wind out of your opponent's sails. How many times has that happened to the Sacramento Kings this season? Imagine you just being a fan, right? Sitting there watching the Kings defend for 18, 19 seconds of the shot clock, and then it results in a made three for the opposing team. And we're sitting there going, oh, God, that's deflating. Imagine how the players feel being the ones to actually fight for that defensive possession, and then it just result in 3 points for the other team and a made basket for the other team, right? The Kings have the capability on offense to quite literally deflate their opponent with how dangerous and dynamic they can be, not to mention exhaust their opponent with how much they have to rotate and gamble and guess and try and scramble to defend all of the offensive weapons that the Sacramento Kings have. But the Kings have not been sharpening their own blade. In fact, they've been blunting their own blade by their inconsistency offensively. Tonight was one of those nights. Tonight was one of those nights where everybody was cooking. It started off a little bit slow, but everybody was cooking. The Kings shot 56% from the field, 51 of 90. They made 51 field goals tonight. That's the most this season. 47% from three-point range, 16 of 34. It's not like they shot an absurd amount of threes, but they were making their threes tonight. And this is beautiful, 91% from the free throw line, 22 of 24. Now, to put this into perspective, the Kings shot 56% from the field tonight. The Cavaliers are the number one team in the league when it comes to field goal percentage at 50.9%. So the Kings shot nearly over 5% better than the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have the number one field goal percentage in the league tonight. The Cavs also are number one in three-point field goal percentage this season at 40.5%. The Kings shot 47%. So 6.5% better from three tonight than the number one team in the league. And then the Knicks lead the league in free throw shooting at 83.6%. The Kings shot 91%. So around 8% more or 8% better tonight. What does that tell you? That the shooting percentages that the Kings put up tonight are not sustainable and not to be suspected. Not to be expected. Right? We cannot expect the Kings to shoot 56%, 47%, 91% in their shooting splits every single night. As much as we would love to see it, and it can happen on a hopefully regular basis, we can't rely on that. The Kings aren't going to shoot like this every night, even if they were the best offense in the league. They didn't shoot like this every night 2 seasons ago when they were the best offense in NBA history. But making open shots that the offense has been generating since the jump is the difference in most of the losses this season. Right? If the Sacramento Kings would make, I won't say a majority, but if they would have made a relatively significant amount more of their open shots that they've been generating, because the Kings are generating a lot of open looks, especially from three-point range, and they just haven't been falling. The amount of players that are shooting miles below their career three-point percentage this season is alarming, but especially catch and shoot wide open threes. The Kings have been abysmal this year, and they're generating those looks because of how dynamic their offense is, because of guys like De'Aaron Fox, who draws so much attention, DeMar DeRozan, who draws so much attention, Domantas Sabonis, when he's down low, draws so much attention, right? We've been talking about this since the offseason. We knew the Kings were going to generate open looks, but they're hamstringing themselves because they haven't knocked them down. You have a night like tonight where after Fox, Huerter, and Murray went 1 of 20 from three-point range in Memphis last night, they shot 9 of 16 from three-point range tonight. Let's focus specifically on Keegan Murray and Kevin Huerter. Keegan Murray, 3 of 5 from three-point range tonight. Kevin Huerter, a perfect 4 of 4 from three-point range tonight. You got to love that. But this is where we say, like, the Kings sharpshooters, particularly those two, are a massive key to Sacramento's success. And because they've been so inconsistent and quite frankly so cold this season, so have the Sacramento Kings. In games where Keegan Murray makes 3 or more three-pointers, which is not an absurd number, 3 or more made threes, the Kings are 4-1. In games where Kevin Huerter, who is primarily a sharpshooter, makes 3 or more three-pointers this season, the Kings are 5-1. So what does that tell you? While the Kings aren't over-reliant on the three like they've been in years past, I feel like the Kings are doing a much better job this season of not heavily relying on the three. The three-pointer has still drastically let them down, but we're not seeing the Kings take 50 attempts from three-point range like they were doing on a fairly regular basis last season and over the last couple of years. It's not like the Kings are just chucking threes all night long. They're doing a better job scoring from the mid-range. Of course, DeMar DeRozan helps with that. They're doing a much better job getting to the rim. I want to talk about De'Aaron Fox getting to the rim because he's doing a significantly better job this season, right? The Kings are not as reliant on the three-point shot as they've been in the past. But when they are taking them and when they are generating them, they need to hit them at a more regular clip. This is not me breaking any news to you, right? This is not an epiphany that I had. This is obvious. But we're seeing, the numbers are showing us that when the Kings sharpshooters, particularly Kevin Huerter and Keegan Murray, who are going to be wide open on the perimeter and get a lot of looks on the outside because of the players that they're playing with, when those guys knock down 3 or more threes, the Kings are damn near unbeatable. And it can make up for some of the issues and shortcomings on the defensive end of the floor. The Kings starters tonight were brilliant. 106 points from all the starters. DeMar DeRozan, 23 points, shot 53% from the field, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. De'Aaron Fox, 22 points, 52% from the field, 4 rebounds, 8 assists. Domantas Sabonis, 22 points, 58% from the field, 16 rebounds, 4 assists. Malik Monk, 22 points, 46% from the field, 9 rebounds, 6 assists. Keegan Murray, 17 points, 63% from the field, 6 rebounds, 1 assist. I have some individual notes for a few of those players. I want to talk about De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis in particular. Also, I'll say this really quick. Malik Monk as a starter. Actually, I'll start with that. I want to start with Malik Monk as a starter and him getting starting caliber minutes because his numbers are sensational. I'll get into that. Plus, we got to talk about Keon Ellis and how he helped the Kings calm things down when things weren't going right early on. And I think the more we kind of read the tea leaves and look at actions and words and kind of a combination of everything, I've already suspected that there's a disconnect between Kings general manager Monte McNair and Kings head coach Mike Brown. But it just makes more and more sense that there is one based off of connecting dots. I'll explain more still to come here on Locked On Kings. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. I know I talked about this a lot on last night's podcast, but allow me to drive the point home even harder when it comes to Malik Monk finally being in the right spot as the starting 2 guard for the Sacramento Kings. This is now 4 games where Malik has started. The Kings are 2-2 over those 4 games, but the individual numbers speak volumes. 19 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 17 points, 2 rebounds, 12 assists, 23 points, 1 rebound, 5 assists, and then tonight, 22 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists. Those are the stat lines from the 4 games where Malik has started. But let's take this a step further because it goes just beyond the title of starter and goes specifically with starter minutes. In the 8 games where Malik Monk has played 30 or more minutes, starting caliber minutes, he's averaging 21.8 points per game. He's shooting 51% from the field, 46% from three-point range, 6.7 assists, 4.3 rebounds, and just under a steal a game. The reality, the bottom line, playing Malik Monk more is better for your basketball team. And I don't know why it's taken this long for Mike Brown and the Sacramento Kings to realize that and understand that. But finally, Malik is getting the starting position and title, and more specifically, the starting minutes that he deserves to get, and he is rewarding the Kings handsomely for that. De'Aaron Fox, what I noticed from tonight's game, it made me think about De'Aaron's career to this point. Because while it wasn't a perfect game for De'Aaron Fox, it was a really good game. We've seen De'Aaron play better. But De'Aaron has gotten significantly better over the course of his career at learning how to protect himself around the rim. Specifically, learning how to pair the speed that everybody knows that he has with the strength that people don't realize he has. Right? He's got a wiry frame. He's got thin legs. But De'Aaron is strong. right? He had a couple of possessions tonight where he battled to the rim, battled through multiple defenders. He does a phenomenal job around the rim, taking contact and not being knocked off balance. And of course, he's excellent at finishing through contact around the rim. His body control is excellent. He does a good job changing speeds, knowing when to burst and go full speed, whether it's in transition or that first step to get by a defender. But he's also learned how to slow down at times, pop the clutch, as Mark Jones says, right? Be under control. And I think what we're seeing more consistently this season compared to last year, especially, is De'Aaron is back to getting to the paint and getting to the rim more. Now, I know this is a challenge from Mike Brown and by extension, Luke Lautz, who's been like the coach for De'Aaron Fox. And by the way, quick segue and quick rabbit hole that I don't want to go too far down, but Luke Lautz and Mike Brown are a package deal. So all of you Fire Mike Brown crowd out there, if you want to retain De'Aaron Fox's services in Sacramento, a good way to do that is to not fire Brown, continue the coaching carousel that De'Aaron Fox has been through pretty much his entire career here in Sacramento. And by proxy, in firing Mike Brown, lose Luke Lautz, who's been easily the most influential coach for De'Aaron in his career and the guy that De'Aaron is closest within that coaching staff. Probably shouldn't get rid of those guys, or De'Aaron is more than likely going to jump. I shouldn't say that. I'd say it makes it easier for De'Aaron to consider jumping ship. But anyway, not going to go too far down that rabbit hole. Just bringing it back. De'Aaron has done a significantly better job and has really done a good job learning how to still attack, get to the rim, touch that paint, go amidst the centers and the forwards and the rim protectors and protect himself better so that he's not giving his body up or risking himself going for a big dunk or going for a one-handed layup and putting his body on the line to where that's where we see the injuries really start to pile up. And that's why De'Aaron Fox has been so banged up over the course of his career, because early in his career, go back and watch highlights of De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron would use his speed and would attack the rim with reckless abandon. And I'm not just talking about trying to dunk the basketball, just laying the ball up. And my man would get knocked to the floor like his name was Gerald Wallace. Right? De'Aaron got clobbered. And he's doing a much better job. I felt last season De'Aaron was shooting the three so much to protect himself. Now I think he's doing a better job understanding how to protect himself around the rim and in the paint while still getting to that rim or taking advantage of one of the primary strengths that he has. Domantas Sabonis, I thought, did a phenomenal job tonight exploiting a weakness. Victor Wembanyama out, didn't play. First and foremost, thank God the Sacramento Kings were able to actually exploit a team missing their star. The Kings beat the Spurs without Wembanyama. It should happen, and we shouldn't really have to celebrate it as much as we do, but we know the Kings, right? Then Zach Collins ejected pretty early in this game. So both the centers for the Spurs are gone. And so how does Sabonis respond? He dominates the paint. And he did a great job taking care of the basketball. He had one turnover tonight. You know, the Kings have not lost a game where Sabonis has one or fewer turnovers. They haven't. Now, the problem is there's only been like 2 games where he's had one or fewer turnovers. Sabonis has to do a better job in general taking care of the basketball. But that's something that he did well tonight. He only turned the ball over once. However, I think this is an interesting note. For the Domantas Sabonis needs to score more crowd. And this was a lot of people saying Sabonis not being a reliable scorer is one of the biggest gripes against him. And that was like probably the biggest thing I saw when it comes to if he was worth the $40+ million contract that he now has. The Kings are actually 5-9 this season when Sabonis scores 20 or more points. That feels like it shouldn't make sense. Or that shouldn't be the case. But it is. Thought that was interesting. And then Keon Ellis. I want to spend a good amount of time talking about Keon Ellis. In fact, I want to make sure that I don't go too long talking about Keon Ellis because I want to take my time and don't want to be rushed on this. Keon Ellis and how he's further proof of a potential Mike Brown, Monte McNair disconnect. That's coming here in just a second. Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of Locked On Kings is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. So find the easiest bet you can find, put $5 on that, you'll win that $150 on FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, I've been teasing it all show. Time to give Keon Ellis his flowers because this game did not get off to a good start for the Sacramento Kings. The San Antonio Spurs scored 30 points in the first 9 minutes, actually less than 9 minutes. The Spurs came out of the gate without Victor Wembanyama hot. And I remember thinking, oh God, like the Kings played good defense last night in Memphis and lost. And now they're not going to show up with the good defensive effort and lose to a shorthanded Spurs team on the second night of a back-to-back, right? Just that start, it was ugly. And then Keon Ellis came into the game. Now, I'm going to share with you in a little bit Mike Brown's comments to Chris Biederman from the Sacramento Bee before the game as to why Keon hasn't been playing. But we'll talk about what Keon did first. Keon Ellis comes in, and for the remainder of the first quarter, the Spurs only scored 3 points. The Kings ended the first quarter on a 14-3 run. Keon Ellis was a plus 32 tonight. When Keon Ellis was on the floor, the Kings outscored the Spurs by 32 points, and Keon Ellis had 4 steals. I don't even care that Keon Ellis scored just 3 points. He was 1 of 4 from 3-point range, 3 assists. I don't care because in the 20 minutes and 42 seconds that Keon Ellis was in the game, he played the best defense on the team. If he's not the best defender on the team, he's number 2. And that means like either Keegan Murray or De'Aaron Fox are number 1. He's 100% minimum top 3. Keon, he's one of your best defenders. And this is where like Mike Brown gets confusing because again, actions and words don't always match up with Mike and Monte McNair, Kings general manager, because Mike talks so much about defense, but won't play Keon Ellis at times. It doesn't make sense. Keon Ellis he needs to play. He needs to play. Keon Ellis is 100% an NBA player. He's one of your best defenders on the team. Keon Ellis needs to play because as we saw tonight, when he's on the floor, your defense looks better. And he's a capable enough 3-point shooter where he doesn't kill you on the offensive end of the floor. Here is Mike Brown's explanation pregame. Chris Biederman asked him straight up about why Keon hasn't been playing over these last couple of games, really since Malik Monk was inserted into the starting lineup. Here's what Mike said. Again, starting Malik Monk, he's going to command more minutes. We're trying to play Kevin Huerter more. We're trying to be a little bit bigger with Isaac Jones and Jay Crowder. So there hasn't been a ton of minutes. Now I can take minutes away from one of those guys to try to get him on the floor, but it's just right now, it's a minutes thing based on who I am playing. Because you get guys that are particularly Kevin who should try to hopefully get a lot more minutes coming off the bench. Either I shorten his minutes or I play smaller with DeMar DeRozan at the 4 at times. And so that's something we've been kind of juggling. That explanation from Mike Brown makes perfect sense. I get it. I 100% get it. But here's the problem. Here's when I read that, this is what immediately sparked into my brain. The Sacramento Kings have a log jam at the guard position. So it's going to be hard for all the guards to play. Now that Malik Monk is in his rightful place and getting his rightful minutes as a starter, that's going to take minutes away from somebody. The Kings are trying to figure out if Kevin Huerter is something for them off the bench. Tonight, he was fantastic. 4-4 from 3-point range. How did the Kings come up with the 20 minutes for Keon Ellis to play tonight? That's because Isaac Jones only played 7.5 minutes. Jay Crowder didn't even play. So the Kings were able to pretty much have their bench just be their 2 guards in Keon and Kevin tonight. But that's not always going to work. And how many times have we talked about the Kings struggle dealing with size of their opponents? The Kings need more size, right? Mike Brown is trying to play the only players off the bench with size that he has. Tonight, he didn't have to. But again, I think this speaks to more of a disconnect between Monte McNair and Mike Brown. It's words and it's actions. And we talked about this many times before. Monte McNair, when he speaks, talks about offense. The Kings need to get back to where they were offensively. And he's right. Mike Brown talks about the defense needs to be better. You can't just win games on the back of their offense. As we saw in the playoffs, he's right. So both these guys are right in their own way. but they need to be coming together and working together better than they are. And so you have this Keon Ellis dilemma, which I think speaks further into something that we haven't really even dove deep into yet because we haven't seen it yet. The Kings are struggling to find minutes for all of their guards that should be playing. Kevin Huerter, an NBA caliber player, needs minutes. Keon Ellis, an NBA caliber player and one of your best defenders, needs minutes. DeRozan, guard forward, but he needs minutes. Malik Monk, De'Aaron Fox, of course, are going to command a lot of minutes. You have a logjam at that position, and your general manager went out and drafted Devin Carter. Now, again, this is not a Devin Carter bash on Devin Carter situation with him being hurt or anything like that. It's not Devin Carter's fault. He was selected. Teams knew he had this injury. He fell to the Kings. The Kings took him. It's not Devin Carter's fault by any means. But how in the hell is Devin Carter going to be able to make a difference on this Kings team when Mike is struggling to find minutes for his proven NBA caliber guards? It doesn't make sense. Again, it speaks to a disconnect. You have Mike showing you that he's having a hard time playing guards, and Mike telling you going into last offseason that you need more help on the wing, you need more size, you need more athleticism. You lost to the freaking New Orleans Pelicans 6 times. You've been beat up by teams with size and athleticism all season long. And your general manager went out and drafted another guard, and I understand why he did it. Got rid of Harrison Barnes, brought in DeMar DeRozan, ultimately got smaller. So how should I feel about this? What I'm not trying to do, and it's very difficult, and I'm playing a dangerous game here. I'm not trying to draw a line in the sand between which side are you on, Team Monty or Team Mike, because that's not the point. They're both on the same team. They both need to come together. And I do think it's interesting, right? Again, reading the tea leaves, why was there a hesitation in the Kings extending Mike Brown? One of the reasons was financial. And I wish that was the only reason. Mike wanted more money than the Kings were willing to give him. But there was clear hesitation from the Kings to extend Mike Brown. And I wonder if it's also having to do with the difference in philosophies. Now, to me, extending Mike Brown was an absolute no-brainer for this franchise. So if I'm looking at the two, while both of them carry their own level of blame for some of the issues that the Sacramento Kings have, 100%, it's not all on one guy. Who am I looking at more critically? I'm looking at Monte McNair more critically because he has not done a good enough job, in my opinion, putting together a roster that complements his head coach. Now, it is a responsibility of a head coach to take the assets that he has and try and put them in the best position to win. And does Mike do that perfectly all the time? No, he does not. But look at Ime Udoka and the Houston Rockets right now. The Houston Rockets have put together a roster of guys who play the way Ime wants to play. They play physical. They play hard on the defensive end. They get under your skin. They play chippy. And how are the Houston Rockets faring? They're one of the surprise teams in the league and are firmly in the playoff mix in the West and firmly above 500 because the roster complements the coach. Now, I'm not saying the Kings have to build an entire roster to suit Mike Brown or that they're even far off in doing that because you look at this core and for the most part, this core complements Mike Brown. De'Aaron Fox and the two-way guard that Fox is complements Mike Brown. Domantas Sabonis, while he may not be the best rim protector, Mike Brown doesn't care too much about blocking shots. He cares more about ending possessions with defensive rebounds. Sabonis is one of the best, if not the best in the league at doing that. Plus, offensively, they run everything through Domantas Sabonis. Great fit. Keegan Murray, spacing the floor, helping with defense and rebounding. Great fit. Malik Monk, even to some extent, whether it's coming off the bench or just being that energizer bunny and playmaker to get everybody else involved. Great fit, even if the defense is lacking. But everything else around the edges, the lack of size, the lack of the right players in the rotational positions or in their respective roles, that's where the disconnect has been with this roster. So I think it's on Monty. I think it's on Monty. They're not far off. But I trust what Mike Brown is saying based off Mike's experience with the Warriors, with the Cavaliers, even with the Lakers to some extent. I trust what Mike Brown is saying of what the Kings need to actually be a sustainable winner. I trust that more than I trust Monte McNair's analytics based off of the Daryl Morey system. Because look at how Daryl Morey has completely destroyed the Philadelphia 76ers. Not completely his fault, but the Sixers are a laughingstock. Trust Mike Brown and bring him the assets that he's looking for. Again, you don't have to change this roster completely. Your core is already good with Mike. But they haven't done a good enough job filling in the cracks and filling in the edges with players that Mike needs and Mike says he's been needing. Instead, Monty's gone out and drafted a guard. And if you want to say best player available, Matt, Dalton Knecht was right there. And Dalton Knecht both, I think, checks the best player available box and checks a need. He's a wing that can shoot. I think the Kings wouldn't love to have Dalton Knecht right now. Now, hindsight is 2020. Of course, we didn't know Dalton Knecht was going to be this good, but a lot of people thought he was the better prospect than Devin Carter. He was there. The Kings didn't take him. Knecht's playing. Carter's not. Knecht fills a need. Carter doesn't. I mean, that's not fair. I think Devin Carter is a two-way player, and the potential that he has on both ends of the ball can be something that the Kings could absolutely use. But he's size-wise, archetype, at a position that the Sacramento Kings have an abundance of and don't need as much of and are already having a hard time playing all that they've got. You think that's just going to go away when now Devin Carter's available in January? Roster construction. Roster construction and the disconnect between Monty McNair and Mike Brown, I think, is getting more and more apparent. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but I think these two need to do a better job. Specifically, Monty McNair needs to do a better job finding some synergy between philosophies. Ultimately, the Kings handled their business on this 2-game road trip. Should they have gone 2-0? Maybe, probably. They should have definitely beat the Memphis Grizzlies last night, but whatever. Anytime you can go 500 on the road, it's a good thing, as long as you handle your business at home. And that's always going to be the if for this Sacramento Kings team. 10 of the next 13 games for the Kings are inside the Golden One Center. Handle your business at home, right? And here's some perspective. So all these 10 games are, you got the Jazz, who've already beat twice, the Denver Nuggets, the Lakers twice, the Pacers, the Pistons, the Mavs, the 76ers, the Grizzlies, and the Heat. Those are the 10 games that you have at home. Let's be pessimistic and say in that 13-game stretch, the 3 road games, let's say the Kings go 1-2 over those 3 games, right? Just being pessimistic. If the Kings win 6 of those 10 home games, they're 18-19, which is a .486 win percentage, which is 11th in the West. They're hovering around 11th, 12th right now, pretty much tied with the San Antonio Spurs, or right around the San Antonio Spurs. The Kings technically are in 12th right now. If the Kings win 7 of their home games, they're above 500 at 19-18, which is a .513 win percentage. Also 11th in the West, but barely behind where 10th is, the Lakers, right now. If the Kings win 8 of those home games, 8-2 over those 10 home games, that's a lot to ask this team based off how they've been playing at home. But if they win 8 of those home games, they're 20-17 on the season, which is a .540 win percentage, which is 9th in the West as of right now. It just goes to show, if the Kings can handle their business at home, if they can win the games, there's a majority of the games they should be winning on their home floor, it can completely flip where they're at. Now is the time to do it. Now is the time to strike. You have 10 of the next 13 games in your building. You got to win 6, 7, 8 of them. And you put yourself in a significantly better position. All right, now I want to hear what you think. Think about the stuff that we talked about, your thoughts on the Kings' 140-point performance and win over the Spurs tonight. Hit me up. Let me know. At MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. Appreciate your support. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.